Well, it probably happens more than we think. People mistake one thing for another. People mistake one sound for another. A child believes a mouse in the basement is the sound of a monster, right? Crawling up the stairs. A driver, has this ever happened to you? A driver hears a thumping noise coming from the engine block, and it turns out to just be a glitch in his speaker system, right? Just too much bass on the speaker. In a scary movie, the back door is ajar, and the person in the movie thinks it's just the wind. The wind has blown the door open. Or is it just the wind? It happens more often than we think. People mistake one thing for another. And in the passage today, there is the voice of God, and the crowd says they hear thunder. Right? They hear thunder. People mistake one thing for another. And that mistake involves the vibration of air around our ears. Where our brains go from there depends upon us. Let me say that again. The vibration of air around our ears, through our eardrums, and where our brains go from there depends upon us. Oh, it's the voice of God. Oh, it's thunder. Oh, it's an angel. Oh, it's whatever. Then a voice came from heaven. I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again. Now, whatever your position happens to be on the weather and meteorology, right? The science of two weather systems colliding, right? Whatever your position, it's still possible that there's been a mistake. For example, I don't know if you've heard of Martin Luther. Martin Luther, that great reformer. Right? Well, some people haven't heard of him, right? 1505. He's 21 years old. He's walking on the road to Erfurt, Germany. And a thunderstorm arises. He's in an open field. And there's lightning and thunder. And right in the middle of the storm, Luther falls down on the muddy road and he says, I'll become a monk. Now what happened there? One of the most prominent theologians and thinkers, right, over the past 500-600 years, as a result of hearing thunder, right, responds as if this is God summoning me, right? That's why I say where our brains go after hearing a sound, it really depends upon us. And it depends upon God's inspiration. A former colleague of mine at First Presbyterian Church, his name was Dave Peterson. This is back in the late 80s. He told a story that I'll never forget. He said he was going into one of those Best Buy stores, right? One of those big electronic stores. And he walked in, and he just had to make a simple purchase. And he was going up the aisle, and he heard a voice. And the voice said, do you know how much I love you? And he felt like he was being addressed. You know? Am I having a psychotic episode? What's going on? And he rounded the corner of the aisle, and he saw this big bank of large television sets. All of them turned to the same soap opera. And two characters in the throes of passion. Do you know how much I love you? Now you can say, well, he made a mistake. But what about that moment in my colleague's brain and mind made him say, I'm being addressed by God? Can't God use the voices that come from pop culture, right? And soap operas? Yes, right? Can't God use the sound of thunder? And it's just thunder. But somehow we feel addressed, summoned. You see. The only problem is sometimes the crowd gets in the way. Sometimes the crowd insists, no, it's just thunder that we hear. It has nothing to do with God. Sometimes the crowd insists, it's just the sociology, right? It's just the cultural forces happening in the world. That's what we do. That's all we do. Sometimes the crowd gets in the way. There's a guy that I used to read a long time ago. His name was Douglas Copeland. Douglas Copeland. And he wrote a book called Life After God, which ironically ends with the author's revelation that he needs God. And he would like God to exist, but it's just that Christians that he's hearing make him doubt, right? And there were Christian radio stations, he writes, so many stations, and the voices on them seemed so enthusiastic and committed. They sounded like they sincerely believed in what they were saying. And so, for once, I decided to pay attention. And it seemed like this crazy orgy of projection, with everyone projecting onto Jesus the antidotes for the things that had gone wrong in their own lives. He is love. He is forgiveness. He is compassion. He is a wise career decision. He is a child who loves me. Everyone, you see what's going on? Everyone on this radio station is projecting onto Jesus their own needs. The Christian crowd that he's hearing is projecting onto Jesus their own needs, right? It's like they're listening to their own voices. And Copeland, he's interested, and he says, I did not deny that the existence of Jesus was real to these people. It was merely that I was cut off from their experience in a way that was never connectable. Have you ever experienced that? You know what I'm talking about? When somebody's talking about their faith and you're listening on the radio or you're watching on television and someone's going, Jesus, 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 Jesus. And you're like, yeah. Will you please be quiet? Right? And you can't live, you can't get into their experience. The experience for you is not connectable. Right? Somehow we need to get beyond the crowd. We need to have separation from the crowd so that our inner ears experience the voice as if it's addressing us apart from the crowd. Right? One of the things that gets in the way, and I don't know if it's true here at Origin, but one of the things that gets in the way of our hearing Jesus, I think, is the issues that dominate public discourse today. Right? Everyone's about the issue. Right? Everyone's about being on the right side of human history. Right? Everyone is about experiencing the debate. Right? Instead of experiencing interpersonal relationship. I was at the Pullman Stadium, Vista Stadium, 2 weeks ago, and we were watching Eastern play WSU and Eastern won. First day was last night also. And what happened was remarkable. Right in the middle of the game, right, before the second half started, my pastor friend, right, he says, I just got this text. I can't believe it. What's the matter? He said, someone wrote a letter to the editor of the newspaper complaining about the Muslim mosque that's near Pullman. And now everyone's like on my case saying, we need to respond. We need to respond. We need to be on the right side of this issue. Right? And he looked at me with just fatigue on his face, and he said, is that what I'm supposed to be doing? Right? Responding to every issue that's raised up by the crowd? Is that it? No. 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 People, right? Not issues. When I'm lifted up, will do what? Will draw all issues? No. Will draw all people to myself. People. We were talking at our board meeting on Wednesday, and I'm not going to quote anybody here, Harold, but one of the things that we were discussing was what kind of community do we have here at Origin, right? I think we certainly have people that like each other and love each other and care for each other, that listen to each other. Amen. Rock on. Good stuff. But do we have a community, right, that listens for Jesus? Right? I think we do. But it takes practice. It can't just be about the issues, right, where everyone is gathered around the right side of the issue. It has to be something that's going on with people. You get me? Alice Walker. Anybody know her? Alice Walker, the writer of The Color Purple. She wrote in a collection of short stories a short story called The Abortion. And in The Abortion, there's a young woman who's had an abortion. In fact, she's had two. Her name is Imani, and Imani is married to Clarence. Clarence is a prominent operative within the political campaign of the mayor of that town, Mayor Carswell. And she returns from the doctor's office after having this profoundly difficult procedure. Right? And I don't want to get caught up in the issue, right? But she returns, and her husband is so preoccupied with the politics of working with the mayor, he can't be with her, right? He can't love her. He can't hold her. He can't say, I'm with you in this pain. And there's a memorial service going on, right, for a slain teenager, an African-American young girl named Holly Monroe. And they go to this service, and Imani is sitting up front with their little girl, Clarice, and she hears whispers in the back. You know how this happens? You're at a big service, and you're supposed to be thinking about Holly Monroe, and you hear people talk in the back. What were they doing? She turns around, and she sees her own husband talking to the mayor. Evidently, they had important business to discuss. You see? We're so interested in what the crowd has to say. What about the people? What about Imani? What about Holly Monroe? Right? And Alice Walker, she depicts Imani as saying this to her little girl. This really hits me. You are going to hear the music. The music they try to kill, you're going to hear it. The music they try to steal, you're going to hear it. They think they can kill a continent, people, trees, buffalo, and then fly off to the moon. You see, this is during the 60s when everyone's distracted about the moon travel. But she says to her daughter, who doesn't quite understand, she says, you and me, we're going to remember the people. The people. One of my favorite writers is this guy named William Willimon. And just bear with me, because this story just blows you away. William Willimon was once in a small church, similar to this, right? In the hills of, I think it was North Carolina. And they wanted to get more people to come to their church. And so they developed these evangelism teams, right? So they would send out people 2 by 2 to all the neighborhoods that they wanted to evangelize, right? 2 of the people that were being sent out, one was named Gladys. Gladys, she was 80 years old, and she was hard of hearing, okay? She was hard of hearing. And each couple, each group of 2 was sent to a different part of the neighborhood, right? But they only sent them to the right neighborhoods. See? They said, don't go over the tracks, right? And Gladys and her companion were being sent out the door, and Pastor Willimon said, did you hear me, Gladys? Go down Main and make a left on Elm. She went right. And therefore, she became dangerous because she evangelized people like Verlene. Verlene, a recovering drug addict. And lo and behold, Verlene came to church. She came to a small Bible study that they were having on Thursday morning. And Pastor Willimon asked the Bible study, said, have you ever, I don't know, experienced temptation and then resisted temptation? And everybody in the group thought about it and they didn't respond. Then somebody said, well, I was at the grocery store and the clerk forgot to check out one of my items, and I thought, I'm just going to take it. They have enough money. But then I resisted temptation, and I went back in and told the clerk, you charged me accordingly. And everybody in the group nodded their heads. Anybody else have a time when you resisted temptation? And then Verlene spoke up. She said, once my old man, not the one I'm with now, but the other one, he said we're going to go knock off that Piggly Wiggly. We're going to go steal from that Piggly Wiggly. Yeah, you know Piggly Wiggly? Yeah.
Way back when.
And Verlene says, I said no. I resisted temptation. He beat the crap out of me. Still, I says no. Is that what you mean, Pastor? And he said, yeah, I guess so. And everybody in the Thursday Bible study said, Pastor, your Bible studies used to be boring. But I think I can get people out of this. What are we hearing, right? What are we hearing in the crowd? Is it thunder? Is it Twitter? Is it God? Let's pray.